I think the task force is moving. I think the part that I'm quite pleased with is the community initiative. Having professional development for parents, for students, and bringing in renowned experts who can come in and train the students, train the parents, and help them understand some of the consequences of not getting the education that their children should be getting, and not being able to help their students and children get the education that they should be getting. So I think the community component that we have out in addressing this outside of the school day, the school hours, in the community, working with the churches, and bringing those experts in here from outside who can bring a different flavor of information to help our parents and our communities grow.
I don't have a lot of familiarity with the task force work, other than what I've read in the paper and what I've heard during some of the board discussions. But certainly it appears to be heading in the right direction. It appears to be capitalizing on some of the successes that have happened throughout the nation at other high-risk schools, and so I applaud their work.
I do agree with the task force and the direction that we're heading in. I also believe, though, that we need to make sure that we continue to empower our parents and making sure our parents are empowered to be able to take back charge of their students' education again. I believe the task force needs to continue to push more for parents in having training, in having workshops, in having seminars that would help them to be better parents, to provide better strategies for their students in order for them to be successful throughout their careers through school. Building upon, if you will, many of those foundational skills that are so necessary for students to be successful in life.
Thank you. The task force actually is doing some really good work. Everything is too slow for me, but it is moving forward. I want to really, truly acknowledge the work of Mr. Reggie Ross, who's a barber who started a library in his barber shop that actually has gotten national recognition, and that came out of the task force. And in addition, we have the Real Men Read program, which is a startup program at Pleasant City Elementary and Village, where males as reading mentors go to the school and meet and read with, especially the boys, but also the girls, each week to show that real men do read. And also as a follow-up on the recruitment and retention committee, staff at the district has had focus groups with black male teachers that are doing a great job to ask them what made them come, what makes them stay, and we're going to be doing specific recruitment for African American male teachers. Thank you.
That's some great ideas. Well, like anything else in life, you have to have money to really implement them. One of the things that I think as a community, as a school board, we need to try to do is find more money to be able to implement the programs and ideas that they have. That's one area that I think our board might be able to help with. And to Ms. Robinson, we do need to still, again, I go back to this point, hiring more black teachers is essential, but also hiring more black administrators. I think those two go hand in hand. I think that'll help accomplish a lot. Thank you.
Again, I would support any recommendation from the task force that is supported by peer-reviewed academic research or things that have happened in other districts. So if the task force is sitting around and say, hey, wouldn't it be a great idea if we did this, let's suggest it to the school, and it isn't supported by actual data, I probably would not support that. Now, however, if there were certain interventions that happened at poor performing schools in, say, Baltimore and Atlanta, and we showed that student outcomes improved by X%, or whatever our benchmark was, and this was consistent across different districts, these are policies that I would support implementing because there's data behind them. Now, where there are school districts that don't have data, let's say that there's a new pilot program, a lot of educational researchers do these types of interventions, and they try in smaller sample populations, and we can see if they're worth implementing in schools, because like John was saying, because it costs money. So I don't want to spend money to implement something that hasn't been tested or doesn't have the probability to be a successful program. So I think, again, we want all of our students to be successful, and whatever recommendations will do that, then I'm obviously in favor of that.
Yeah. One of the things that we're not discussing, though, is that, and the task force is aware of it and has brought it forward, is that the state mandates the infusion of the African American curriculum in our schools. It's not happening yet. It's still not happening, and no matter how we state it, we've got to make sure, we've got to ensure that that happens. And then those recommendations coming from the task force, they're reflected in the increased graduation rate that Dr. Robinson mentioned. But also what we need to recognize is that those recommendations will also have a positive impact on our English language learners and our ESE students. Once we start getting into the recommendations coming out of this task force, all students are going to improve.
I believe strongly in the community, and I love the idea of a task force that's been created to deal with one of the largest problems this district has had to face. This is a very exciting moment to be able to have this. We know that African Americans in this district graduate at a lower rate. They are more likely to be put in juvenile detention. They're more likely to have difficulty in school in general. Their academic achievement is less. So to create a task force that brings together community ideas and gives them the opportunity to figure out how we can best solve this problem, I'm 100% behind it. I'm excited to be a part of it, and I cannot wait to participate with them in improving our education system.
My name is Larry Rosenzweig. I'm a candidate for school board in District 4. As a kid growing up in Pennsylvania, listening to my dad talk about his experience on the school board made a huge impression on me. And when I came to Palm Beach County to start the Morikami Museum and Japanese Gardens, I also met my wife, who was a 40-year educator in the Palm Beach County School District. And I learned about almost every aspect of the school district through association with her and through shepherding my two sons through the public schools. While I was doing that, I was taking the Morikami Museum from a one-person operation, myself, to nearly 50 people, from an annual budget of $25,000 a year to almost $4 million. I built millions of dollars worth of facilities, had to maintain them, manage and motivate staff, and on the way, I also built a large group of supporters.
What is your stance on standards such as Common Core and high-stakes testing?
Well, I think we have just overdone it with high-stakes testing. The FCAT was a big flaw on implementation. I believe in high-quality standards, but I do believe that local authority from the school board, from parents and teachers should have input before we actually begin any process. The Common Core started off backwards because it started out with other individuals outside of the local school boards and communities and parents, and it was a top-down initiative. I think we can't test our children to death. We need to teach them. We need to teach them to read. We need to teach them math. And we need to make sure that they're learning and then assess them.
I agree with attempting actually to have a common standard for each grade, each subject. But how to measure that standard and how to teach or the curriculum that goes with that standard, I think really needs to remain with the local school boards and teachers and parents. Lots of input. I think that the accountability needs to be set out at the state level that really invites a lot of input from the local level so that it can be designed from kind of the ground up rather than from the top down.
We need standards. We do. It's just a given. You can't have one child learning one thing in one school at one classroom, another child learning something totally different because that's what the teacher likes. We do need standards. Assessing a child's knowledge is one thing. Holding a child responsible is another. And that's exactly what we do now. We hold our children responsible for the adults' actions. Right now, just this past FCAT season, and by the way, FCAT's not going away, it has a new name, FSA. It's not going away. It's not. So don't let the paper fool you. But last year, or I should say this ending school year, only 55% of our third graders are reading proficient. 56% of our sophomores are reading proficient. It's 45% of our third graders that may not see fourth grade. They're in ESY right now. working on a student portfolio, waiting to take the Stat 10, another test. Sophomores, they may not get a regular high school diploma. It's scary. What are they going to do? I believe in standards. Holding the child responsible,
Your time is up.
I don't.
Testing is not teaching. And we have to make sure that we get back to teaching the basics. For the simple reason that we're bombarding our students with assessments rather than teaching them the basics they need in order to be successful for life. The problem is that we're testing and testing and testing and forgetting about the basics. We've got to get back to the basics. Common Core is good on the surface for what it is, but any curriculum that will dictate to a teacher as to what to teach, how to teach, and when to teach it, I am not in favor of it, and that's what Common Core will do. We have to make sure that we are allowing our teachers to be teachers again, making sure that we allow them to be able to teach phonemic awareness and subject and verb agreement in language, and making sure that we're teaching writing again, not writing for a test, but writing for life. And we are bombarding our students with test after test. Our students are frustrated. Our parents are frustrated. I have parents that come to me and say, Mr. Hendricks, I don't want my child to stay back in 3rd grade.
Yeah, I don't want them to stay back in 3rd grade either, but it's not the test that did it, it's that they didn't learn. And so, let me say, I support standards. I think it's critically important that we have standards because we need to be clear about what a child's supposed to know and be able to do at a certain grade, and not say, well, that's good for him because he's from a single parent home, or whatever other excuse that we might want to give. It's important that we have high standards. We have to shoot for them. The problem with these high stakes tests, though, is that it causes so much pressure on the system, including the teachers in the classroom, and especially now that they might lose their job, right, is that they narrow what they teach. There's nothing about the standards, including Common Core, that says that you cannot teach, for example, angles while shooting pool. Okay, my husband taught our children angles, right angles and so forth, while shooting pool. You can do that with Common Core and any other set of standards. So let's not get mixed up about what's going on. It's not the standards that's causing the problem. It's the teaching to the test.
You just hit that thing out of the park. The best way to understand Common Core is this. Under Common Core standards, they would tell you 3 times 4 equals 11. If you can explain that 3 times 4 equals 11, it is 11. That's what Common Core is. It's the simplest way I can present it to you. We know that that's not the case. Common Core is the biggest threat to our society in a long time because the goal of it is to program our children to think a certain way. If there's one thing I can't stand up here before you right now is tell you I am strongly against Common Core, and I believe that is the defining issue in this entire election. Thank you.
First of all, Common Core was developed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which does international help with education. If you go to my website, mac4pbcschools.com, you can click on common issues and scroll down, and you can actually, there's a link directly to Common Core's website, so you can see directly from the source. And the lady at the end hit it right on the head. There is no first of all, there is no Common Core curriculum. You can teach whatever you want. I mean, there's a test at the end that is set at a higher international level. And I'm telling you, I tutor these kids overseas they think they're stupid. You know, this guy Giordano from Italy, he has a summer home here in Boca. He comes out here and he's telling me that the kids that he gets to school with him tell him he's stupid. And this guy's math is ahead of my strongest students at Pinecrest in Spanish River. I actually took a picture of his Italian book that he's failing, gave it to them, and they looked at it and said, I can't do this. Okay, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Our standards are much lower than international, and it's that way for year after year after year. Nothing has changed, and it's time to finally do something about it before all our jobs go overseas.